Hey everyone, welcome to the spoiler section for The Great Hunt. I am excited to talk about it. This is more loosey goosey and more freeform when it comes to this because I very rarely do spoiler sections for books. And for me, this is one that I actually kind of want to talk about because there's a lot of things that I want to say about it that I really don't want to spoil people on. But now that we're all here, we're all chummy, everyone, why don't we get into this whole discussion? For me, I think a lot of this book kind of focuses on Rand and his acceptance of becoming the Dragon Reborn. And by the end of this book, it's more of a story about acceptance and kind of figuring out not your destiny. It's kind of like one of those things like I don't believe it's his destiny rather than his duty. I feel like there's a lot of things like this narrative follows into this thing of acceptance in many ways. Like he's denying the call, but then eventually embraces it, very much like a Joseph Campbell's hero's journey. But we see this with every single character. We see it with Nynaeve kind of accepting she wants to be this Aes Sedai, but she also wants to be super great, and she kind of doesn't want to take no for an answer in many ways. And by the end, she assumes leadership and kind of when they're in Falma. I'm going to be getting names wrong, I think, but when she's in the town and Egwene has the spooky inhibitor collar on her neck, like she takes charge. We see that she wants to have a romance with Lan, and we see a lot of this context stuff. Egwene, it's more of her acceptance, and I guess it's not really acceptance, more of she gets kind of hoodwinked and she has this collar on and she's pretty much forced to become a slave or a weapon. I think a weapon's more suiting for this. But when it comes to it, her acceptance is kind of getting her freedom and her independence back because she gets indoctrinated by the Sinchan. And basically, it's almost like the best way to put this is the Theon Greyjoy narrative where he becomes Reek. She does the exact same thing. She loses her own personal identity in many ways. And, she doesn't even recognize her name. But when she reclaims her humanity, this is where, the gloves come off and this is where she fights back, especially at the end of this book. It's more of kind of getting back your individuality or accepting that you're your own person in many ways. When it comes to Matt, is it that he's accepting that he doesn't really need the dagger, even though he's slowly dwindling away because he doesn't have his gigantic cursed cracked sword with him? Maybe? It's one of those where I guess his acceptance is that he accepts Rand, he accepts kind of this adventure, and he does accept that he has a problem that he needs to get fixed, especially in Tar Valon, which, he needs to go there to solve all of his problems. We see this with Perrin, with his eyes changing, he's becoming more wolf-like or more animalistic, and he needs the acceptance of kind of his pack in many ways and how that's going to save everyone. When it comes to Tom, oh man, when it comes to Tom, I think his is kind of interesting. Like, it's more of a thing about denial. Like, he doesn't want to go on the quest. He wants to do nothing with it. He doesn't want to be in this game of houses. He kind of wants to bunk down with a slightly younger girl. Yeah, but he doesn't want to play this, but he's thrusted upon it when Dina is horribly murdered. Even though he's like a former court bard, he has to be thrust back into the situation where his whole destiny is now tied with Rand and the gang and the pattern. He doesn't even get Moraine, and she's kind of accepting kind of her place in the world, especially when it comes to, I guess for her, it's destiny, I guess, because in this narrative, we have this acceptance of, she's already making plans within plans in case she dies, and she's pretty much giving her contract from Lan to someone else. I think inevitably, this is my prediction, is that the person she's ending up giving the contract to is going to be Nynaeve. I think obviously Nynaeve and Lan are a couple. I don't do shipping stuff, so I'm not going to talk about that, but that's where the narrative looks like it's going in that way. I do have something that I'm going to say as a prediction because, this book opens up with kind of this evil fantasy deep state of the conspiracies of these dark friends, and I think Moraine is one of them. I think she's a Black Aja. I don't know if she's doing it for good or bad reasons, but there's a lot of context clues, especially the beginning of this book. She's away when that thing starts to happen. We have a lot of things like, obviously there are people there, and I think that would be an interesting twist to have where it's either her or her best friend, the Amelin seat, is gonna be Black Aja. It's kind of like, oh yeah, I was just evil the entire time, and this whole thing about predestiny and finding the Dragon Reborn, because this has all been prophesized, is actually to kind of bend the wheel in my favor in many ways. That seems like something that I feel like would be a twist. I probably don't know if I'm right or wrong. Please don't answer that. I guess I should say that. Don't give me questions or don't spoil things for me. But there's things like that that I always see, especially when it comes to this narrative. I'm sure I'm probably missing a lot of people. But even like, I guess another one, I guess, would be if I want to talk about acceptance is Bornhold, who in the, he's a child of light and he starts questioning orders and kind of has like this disobedience of what's what right and wrong. This is where I'm seeing a lot of like the questioning of command and military authority in many ways. And he kind of, he pretty much goes on a Custard's charge a little bit and dies. And we see a lot of crazy stuff with the magic, especially when it comes to the Aes Sedai and pretty much Rand doing his magic stuff. I think that stuff is so impressive. I kind of like that. Again, there's a price to pay for both men and women. I am seeing a lot of Bene Gesserit stuff, especially in this book, especially when it comes to, there's a lot of Dune parallels you can make. I think the Aiel Waste, it's just Dune. It's just planet Arrakis in many ways. And we're seeing already like the court politics. I'm pretty sure I saw Baron Harkonnen off in the back with his spooky magical floating chair. But you see stuff like that I've noticed. There's a lot of things about this world that's expanding, and I feel like we're gonna get different continents, much like in A Song of Ice and Fire. They kind of talk about it like there's a landmass somewhere else where you just can't go to because the ocean's too thick. Oh my god, yeah, I guess it's a thick ass river or ocean, boys. Obviously, I think the world's going to expand more. We're gonna see more of this as being less of a continental conflict and more of a worldwide conflict, as Rand in the end of this book accepts he's the Dragon Reborn, and people start already coming to him. They pretty much start giving their allegiance to him. And this is going to be interesting because, again, I guess there is prophecy stuff because, he pretty much fits every description with the hands are burned into his arms, his sword is melted down, his last remnants of being a shepherd or being Rand al'Thor, shepherd of the two rivers, has gone away. And now pretty much he is going to be this new person when it comes to the Dragon Reborn. And I'm really excited to see where the story goes. I think what's going to end up happening, if I'm looking at this and how my brain works, is that Rand al'Thor is going to unite the world. And at the very last second, there's going to be the verge where he's going to almost break it. And that prophecy is kind of written in a way where it's not written in stone. This isn't Terminator 2. Fate is what you make of it. Isn't that right, John Connor? Yeah, they it up. We're going to see some interesting twists and turns with him. I feel like he's there, but there's going to be a different thing when it comes to the ultimate conclusion of the story, because it's a battle of good versus evil, but I don't see Rand being the person to defeat evil in many ways. I think it might be like a Neville Longbottom situation where all these clues line up. You just had the wrong person in the wrong place at the wrong time, but it just works in that way. I can give plenty of examples of this, but we're going to stay with the Great Hunt. But overall, I think there's a lot of great things that I liked about this book. I think for me, one of the best things about it is kind of the adventure they go on, especially when it comes to all the gangs splitting up. I'm feeling this is going to just be something that happens where all of them meet up somewhere, and then some crazy event happens where they're pushed out of where they are, so there isn't like them being compliant in many ways, and they're going to be forced to go their separate ways. And then at the end of the book, they're all going to come together and be happy-go-lucky, or they're going to be changed or moved or become more adults in this way. Other things that I'm sure is going to happen, if this is another prediction, is that they're probably going to be racing back to the Two Rivers very soon. They keep throwing that name out, Two Rivers Andor, and I feel like, well, we have this guy that's just proclaimed himself the dragon. What is one way to get rid of him, or at least get him back in one way, shape, or form? Oh, I know. Why don't we burn his town to the ground? He doesn't have nowhere to go. We'll get rid of everything. His dad's still alive. I see that happening. I feel like that's probably going to be an event that might happen in the next book or the book after that. But we're going to see some bigger, badder things, especially when it comes to Rand and everyone. My biggest thing that I hope they do, I hope Matt gets that dagger taken away. I hate this plot line so much. It is so annoying. Obviously, it's a plot point in this book. They've already done it. Please get rid of that dagger. Get it out of his freaking hands. But that's kind of like my thoughts about it, because it feels like a plot element, not a character thing. Out of everyone, the person isn't fleshed out is Matt. I guess maybe because we haven't had a POV chapter really from him. Not that I can remember, but he's the least interesting out of everyone. Just get that dagger out of his hands, or so help me. But that's kind of like the fun things that I think about, especially with this, is kind of all the craziness and kind of all the character stuff that I really liked. I loved all the stuff with the parallel worlds and Rand seeing different possibilities and Nyanyev seeing the exact same thing, and kind of how they're seeing their own versions of themselves, but how they could be if they made a different decision. It reminds me of that episode of Doctor Who, I think it's called Left or Right. That's the one with Donna where she has the choice of if she wants to go right or left, and it completely alters the course of time itself in many ways. So that's a great episode if you've never seen it. But that's what it kind of feels like with this. And even in the end, they use that narrative, especially when it comes to, okay, let's do this. Beelzemon, I always think he's a Pokemon, where it's like, in every possibility that I saw, Beelzemon or Satan or whatever the hell I'm going to call you today, Father of Lies, Father of Whispers, Heart's Bane, or, well, I don't know, Derek in some other place. I never joined you. And it's like a Star Wars thing. No. But I love that stuff. I kind of like how this book kind of wraps up and how it has much of a somber tone. The other thing that I noticed, I have a feeling about this, is that the lady that wants to jump Rand's sheep herder bones throughout the majority of the story, I can't remember her name, is secretly that Forsaken at the end of the book that kisses him. Where it's, I think in the back of the book, it's like this person had like a thing with Lutheran. That's just her in disguise in many ways. That's my thing. That's my prediction, because I didn't care for her. She feels like Denna in the King Killer Chronicles, and not in a good way. Oh man, I'm sure I'm gonna get hate for that one. Yeah, she feels like Denna. Oof. But that's the stuff that I think about, especially when it comes to this book. Well, everyone, thank you all so much for watching this video. I really appreciate it. You are all amazing, and it's a lot of fun to do this stuff. I couldn't do without you all, and all your wonderful comments and our speculations and theories, and really from the bottom of my heart, I really love you all. Well, everyone, thank you all so much. If you like this video and this is your first time watching a Middle Fantasy video, please just subscribe down below, give me a thumbs up. I'd really appreciate that. Well, everyone, thank you all so much. And like always, may your food and drink ever be tasteful. May your books be filled with fantasy and adventure. Bye, everyone. See ya.